I said it before, and I will say it again. I will say it well after we as a country have mustered the strength to defeat the pandemic, to defend Americans against COVID and defeat it. Even after we reach that point, when I look back, if I get married and have children and have grandchildren, I will tell them that the problem with how we handled COVID-19 as a country, it wasn't Nancy Pelosi. It wasn't President Trump. It was Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell was the problem. And I say that now. Mitch McConnell is the problem. On Tuesday, earlier this week, he said, look, we're going to have a vote. They held a vote, and that vote was to do one thing. That vote was to spend $260 billion to extend the Paycheck Protection Program. In theory, there's nothing wrong with that. Businesses need help. But I have said before, and I will say again, when we look at the totality of the stimulus package that we were able to get passed, the CARES Act, the least effective form of stimulus that occurred within that package was the Paycheck Protection Program. Am I saying that it wasn't effective at all? No. I'm just saying it's the least effective. Don't remember the episode in which I said it, but the gist of why I say that, think about it. Businesses said, look, you give us money, we'll use that money to to keep people on our payroll, and we only have to do it till a certain amount of time. The problem with the PPP was this. They only had to, here's the word, attempt to keep people on payroll. So what does that mean? And it was very convenient that when the $600 was given every week, that extra money to the unemployed, one of the things that we were hearing from the very people who understood the necessity of its passage was that, oh, well, we can't have it because it's a disincentive for them to work. Very convenient that they were saying that at that time. Why? Because all they had to do was attempt to get people back, which we don't know if they really attempted. If Bob the builder, who had a building company, had, I don't know, Fred Phelps. I don't know if there's a man called Fred Phelps. If there is, I'm just using you as an example. If Bob had an employee, Fred, and Bob had to lay Fred off, and then Bob could, his building company could get money, and he would just have to use a percentage of that to get Fred to come back to work. Well, think about it. If Bob said, well, look, let me act like I tried to get Fred to come back to work, and I can still keep the money for the organization, money that I would otherwise have to spend on him. I could use that and reinvest it in the business and try and sustain ourselves a little bit longer. That makes perfect sense to do. I mean, they love to make this leap of, well, yeah, it makes perfect sense to get $600 per week plus extra state benefits if you don't have to work for it. It just as equally makes sense to say, well, I attempted to get a person back to work who I'd have to pay X amount of money per week, but the business can keep it if he doesn't come back. It makes absolute sense to do that. Then you can use that money to cover your rent because Fred conveniently never came back to work. Then what else did we see? These businesses that received money, these industries that receive money, what did we see when the first of the month came around? For those who could sustain themselves until the first, we saw mass layoffs. Why? Because the agreement under the PPP only necessitated that they kept people on until a specific date if they could afford to. So for this reason, yes, PPP helped during the time that it did. Yes, it helped legitimate business owners who legitimately made efforts and were able to get people to come back. It was helpful in that regard. But here's the deal, in the words of Joe, even if Bob the Builder could afford to get Fred to come back, and Fred agreed to actually come back, look, if no one was buying services from Bob the Builder, after that money was gone, Bob the Builder was going to have to let Fred go anyways. So, look, again, in the words of Joe, here's the deal. Giving companies money, only just giving them money, when we have a consumer-based economy where businesses depend on consumers and consumers depend on businesses, if you only help one part of the equation, specifically the companies, you're going to end up with ghost companies. Because yes, they can afford to keep some employees. They can afford to keep showing up to work every day. They can afford to keep holding the Zoom meetings and Zoom calls, and they can keep affording to have their, their offices and stuff. But at a certain point, when they don't have customers, they're going to have to cut back. And then it's going to have to go from cutting back to closing. And that's what we are seeing, I think, at this point with like 1 in 8 businesses. I am not. You had Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, who, okay, anyways, I'm not going to go there, right? Okay, like, if I can, he's like kind of one of my, okay, no. Okay, so Kevin O'Leary, right? So, Mr. Wonderful, who I think lives up to the name, he, quite frankly, was correct in saying that we are essentially creating ghost companies. And these ghost companies, they need consumers. They need customers. So, in essence, politicians have to realize you absolutely have to help Americans. You can't just help businesses. For this reason, again, the PPP, in my opinion, I'm not saying it wasn't effective at all, but if we had to rank the level of effectiveness with all the programs, with all the forms of stimulus that comprised the stimulus package, that was the least effective form of stimulus compared to other forms of stimulus. That vote that we saw on Tuesday, as has been the case multiple times, not just with the Republicans, but with the Democrats in the House as well, that vote was a political stunt. It was just something that they could do so that way when they went back to campaign, when they went in front of their constituents, they could say, well, see, I attempted to do this, and we needed to pause. And after we paused, we just decided to do, it was just made sense of pause. Like, no, this was a stunt. In the words of the president, it is what it is. Everything, I said it before, everything in life is about perception, but especially in politics, perception is the name of the game, which is why you need to look at what people do and not what they say. You see what they do. You hear what they say. You don't see what they say. What they see, what they say, if you see them talking, that doesn't mean a damn thing. What matters is what they do before and after they say what they say to you. These Republicans, when Mitch held that vote on Tuesday, he's counting on either people being uninformed about what he was actually voting on. And, he's maybe hoping that you think that, well, we were voting on a $1,200 stimulus. He wasn't voting for that. He was voting simply and purely and only to help businesses. He was not planning to help you. He didn't vote to help you. He doesn't care about helping you. He was hoping that you would either think that, you would just assume that he was planning to help you, he was counting on you being uninformed, or he was hoping that you would give the Republicans the benefit of the doubt and assume that, oh, well, they really wanted to help people, but they knew that they couldn't agree on that. So they were just willing to just do what they thought that they could do. Look, again, here's the deal. In the words of Joe, I understand that, most people are optimistic. Most people are not pessimists, right? And we like to think that people are, um, that people have kind of like your best interest at heart, that people are always kind of acting out of a good place. But we live in the real world, okay? The world is a scary place. Not everybody is out there trying to help you, even when they are in a position where that is actually what they should be doing. Not everybody is trying to make sure that you're okay. I don't have children, but I'm talking to you how I think parents at some point have to talk to their kids, whether they do it earlier in their life or later in life. They have to sit you down and they have to say, look, I understand that I have been a consistent form of care and hope and help for you your whole life, but that's not what you're going to get. I may have given you participation trophies, but in real life they don't give you that. Now I understand a lot of these parents nowadays, they don't have those conversations because they are the very ones giving their kids participation trophies, and then these kids are like crazy and they're all depressed and heck, I even saw a few years ago they were saying you can't even write a kid's grade in the letter red because the red like did something to their minds, and oh my gosh. Yeah, I totally get the whole PC culture. Okay, but I'm having that conversation with you right now. And I don't know how else to put it to you. Am I saying that they are all nefarious actors who are out to get you and use and abuse you? No. But I'm also not saying that you should assume by default that they genuinely want to do what's in the best interest of you. Don't assume in either direction without looking at what they have done. And even when you look at what they've done, as we talked about this vote that was held on Tuesday, you need to investigate. I understand. I love politics. I would never run for political office. Never. You couldn't pay me to do that, right? But I love politics. This is why I founded this organization. Like politics, I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to break it to you, kid. Like I said, like it's people really, they get into politics and they may start with good motives. It's just how, for instance, when you look at the issue of police brutality, right? A lot of people like to say, "Oh, all police are bad," and defund the police and those horrible, horrible people. Look, are there some people who have a bias towards either certain ethnic groups or those in serious and specific socioeconomic groups, and who want to assume that those positions maybe to have negative impact? Sure, but that number is so small. I think for the majority of police, they literally have they get into it wanting to do good work, but they may either not realize their bias or through negative experiences. I kind of, when I restarted the podcast, I gave the example of sometimes how people can, for instance, be prejudiced, they can be racist, but you don't know, not making an excuse for the ideas that they have. You don't know if every, for instance, African American woman that they have seen has been belligerent and acting in a way that is not within the confines of societal norms. So can you blame them if that is literally all they have seen? Does that mean that everybody's like that? No, but I can't blame you if that's all you've been exposed to. What that says to me is you need more exposure. Same can be said for these politicians. I think they come into this and they want to do good, but with how our elections are financed, look, I believe the phrase, don't hate the player, hate the game. I'm going on several tangents here, but I have to say this. I do believe that we need campaign finance reform. I absolutely do. It might boggle the minds of some people when they hear that I started a super PAC if I believe we need campaign finance reform. And I actually really don't like super PACs. But it's a thing of don't hate the player, hate the game. A lot of people, the whole premise of, if for one, if you think that you were listening to just a podcast, no, this is not just a podcast. Like, this is a form of marketing that we do, but we are actually a political organization, right? And voting is important. You're hearing everybody say now, vote, 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 vote. It's absolutely important, especially when you see it translate into record numbers of voting like we're seeing now, right? But here's the deal. I'm just like so connected with Joe with me keep saying, here's the deal. Here's the deal. The people who have what we perceive to be as a society the most political power, the ones who can get on the phone with the senator when you can't, the one who can get that House representative on the phone when you can't, the one who can get the president to make moves when you can't, those are the people not who are marching out there in the streets. Those are the people who make campaign contributions. So, that said, voting is serious. Please do it. Please do it. In this political cycle, we are not really active. We are ramping up literally as soon as November 4th comes along. We are ramping up to hit go. For those who thought that, oh, well, it doesn't matter what we do right now because, we're not up for re-election. Oh, buddy, you're up in the next cycle and we are coming for you. We're laying low right now, but when you see what we've got planned, we are coming for you. And we are going to do everything in our power to make sure that voters do not have the voter amnesia that they are counting on you having. But when you hear people that, hoop and hop about, oh, the corporate interests and the corporate donors and and they're bad, 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 bad. Yes, they are bad. But do you not realize that you can also donate directly either to politicians themselves or to super PACs like ours to have influence that those corporate elitists have as well? And no, you might not be able to write a $50,000 check or $100,000 check or $1 million check, but you can. If enough Americans who can really only afford to sacrifice a cup of coffee, if enough Americans say, let's do that, we can run political ads that result in people's understanding of who these politicians are just change and actually translate into votes. This is why we are called our United Resource PAC, because this is our PAC. We're the PAC of the people. We're not the PAC of the people who are out there as, who have the lobbyists in their pocket and who have corporate donors on speed. No, that's not who we are. People might look and say, well, this PAC really hasn't really raised any. Like, this has pretty much come from me. Because I believe in the American people, because I believe that, yes, reform is necessary to campaign finance, but at the same time, don't hate the player, hate the game. And until we can change the game, you better believe we're in it. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Senator Elizabeth Warren, who most of you know, I went on so many tangents there. I don't even know where I was going. So I'm just going to end that thought. I went from A to B to C to D to I don't know where I was going. So I'm going to stop. And I want to share with you rather something that Senator Elizabeth Warren said. She said, and I quote, "The bill that Mitch McConnell put on the floor today," talking about the one on Tuesday, "leaves behind our struggling families, small businesses, minority-owned businesses, restaurants, doctors and nurses, and public health experts." Kyle Herrick, president of the watchdog group Accountable US, he said, "Only voting to extend a program that failed the very people it was intended to help without fixing any of the flaws that allow it to fail is completely nonsensical." There you have someone, you don't really hear it that often. You don't hear it that often. People who are in positions of power come and say that the PPP wasn't really effective. But here, Kyle openly admitted, look, this program, like it like failed, right? You're definitely not going to hear most politicians say that, because most money comes from corporate donors. And so if they agree not to help them, their corporate donations are going to stop, right? And most business owners are not going to say it doesn't work and that it wasn't really effective, because they benefit from it. They always like to see, anyways. But so here the guy is saying, look, if we're going to do this, we've got to make some changes. Maybe those changes are, hey, if your people don't come back, you have to give that money back. Maybe those changes are, well, hey, we're only like you can't keep doing the same thing that did not work and expect a different result. That is the definition of insanity. So if we attempt to do like Mitch just wanted to do, which was do the same thing all over again, something that didn't work, and just do it again, and what happened? Wait, hold up, wait a minute. Where's the freaking fiscal conservatism? Aren't we not for just spending money and throwing it against the wall and, well, it didn't work. Like, what the heck, Mitch? I'm a fiscal conservative. We cannot fix this by only helping businesses. If Mitch McConnell does not understand this, he doesn't need to be in office. But I mentioned way long ago when I started this, before I started rambling, in another segment, that he understands this. He has been in office long enough, which in and of itself demonstrates that we are not dealing with a dumb man. He is intelligent. What Mitch McConnell thinks is that you, the American people, whether you are his direct constituent or not, he believes, he has to believe, that you are just too dumb to understand what's going on. But the problem is actually Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is the root of the problem.